and welcome to this week's session of In the Labs with me, Becky. And this week I'm going to show you how super easy it is to create your own original artwork, just like the prints that you can see behind me, whereby this week I'm going to walk you through how to create your own wood block in order for you to print up your own artwork. So let's take a look at this in the software.
Okay, so we're in VCarve. This can also be done in Aspire. I'm going to go and create a new file, setting up a single-sided job, and I plan to print onto A1 cartridge paper. So I'm going to make the job a little bit bigger than this. I'm going to make this 25.4 inches in the width, and then for the height we're going to go 35.1. Material thickness I'm working with is 0.47, just MDF material. Set it to the Z0 to the material surface, XY position in the center, and then we could just go ahead and press OK. Right then, so the first thing that we need to do is bring in our image. And so now for something like a wood block print, you really want to use sort of a contrasting image. That way we can then, easily trace our vectors to all of the contrasting parts of our image. Now let me just show you the image we're working with. So this is a photograph that I've took in grayscale. You can see it's just some lilies, and we've got this nice geometric background. Now something like this, if we trace it, we can do it, but I want to really pull out the contrast here, so we're going to need to use photo editing software. So there's lots of different editing packages available that you can get via the internet. However, if you don't have any photo editing software, then you could always use something as simple as Microsoft Word. So I'm just going to copy this image, go into Word, and we'll just paste that image in there. And if we just double click on that image, that'll bring up all of the sort of picture formatting options. Here I'm simply going to go to colour, and then I'm going to use one of these options. So this one here, black and white 25%. You can see I have real stark differences there between the black and the white areas, and I think we could get a nice trace from this, and this looks pretty funky. So I'm just going to take that, I'm going to right click it, I'm going to go and press copy, and then we're going to go back into VCarve, right click, and then we're just going to paste that bitmap in place. Okay, so here we can make this image bigger. Remember, I am working, I plan to print onto A1 paper, so what might help me first is if I draw a vector that represents my A1 sheet. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, and we're just going to set the center point to 0, 0. Width is going to be 23.4, and the height is going to be 33.1. I'm going to press create, and you'll see it's created that there for me. So this will be my A1 sheet. So now I can take my bitmap, take the corners, hold down shift just to bring that up in proportion. I might want to do that a little bit more. Okay, so something like this. I've got a nice border going around the outside there. Now looking at the image, what you see that is black, I'd like to be printed black or inked up so that we can make a print of everywhere that is black in that image. And so everything that you see is white will ultimately be cut away, and so the way we're going to sort of define those boundaries is by tracing this image. So how do we do that? We simply take our image, and then we're going to go into the trace bitmap form. Okay, so we have two types of options to trace. So we can use colour tracing or black and white. As this is a black and white image, it makes sense for us to just use the black and white option. And here we have a slider bar, and this will just alter how much of the colour is going to come through, how much we want to trace. So you can alter this accordingly to how you prefer. So I'm going to go something like this. That seems to be okay. Then we choose the corner fit. Okay, so we're going to make that loose. Noise filter up to 10 pixels. I'm going to group those vectors and then simply press preview, and you can see it's created the vectors for us based on our image. So we can simply press apply, and then we can close that down. Now I really like the orientation or the composition that I've got my image in, and I'd like to see my final print in this composition on my wall. Now, because we are printing, we're essentially going to basically take a print from everything that is black in this image onto a piece of paper. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we flip this horizontally so that I get the correct orientation when I come to actually create the actual final prints. So just doing that, flipping that horizontal will do that for me. Okay, so we've done that. Now what I need to do is just to create a series of vectors that are going to represent some of my machining boundaries. Okay, so first one, I'm just going to draw a rectangle from top left corner to the bottom right corner. Okay, so this vector is basically going to represent the outside of my frame. Okay, remember I drew a vector earlier that represents the A1 sheet, and so the idea here is I'd like to pocket this down a little bit so that I have a reference point for my paper to slot in to the corners so that I know that it's going to lay out flush with the print. So now I need to create a vector that basically is just a little bit bigger than the print. Okay, so something like this. So simply just draw that out, and then we're going to create another one. I'm just going to simply take that vector we just created, we're going to offset that outwards, creating sharp corners by 0.3 like so. Close out there, and I've got various vectors, and these will make more sense when I come to talk about the toolpaths. Another thing that I'd like to do is to create a flute that's going to go in the top, centre and the bottom centre of the part, and the idea of the flute is that I can get my finger in to get the paper out once we've done the actual press printing. So to do that, I'm just going to go into the polyline tool, and I'm simply just going to draw a line, press 2 and then enter, and it'll create a polyline that's 2 inches long. I'm just going to position that in on the centre. You can see I'm snapping there, and I'm just going to take that up ever so slightly. Right then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of that to the bottom. So we're just going to go into the mirror tool, and we're just going to say create mirrored copy, flip about job center, and then flip vertical, and you can see it's put that down at the bottom there. One final thing that I need to do, as this vector here represents my A1 piece of paper, I need to make sure that my tool is going to cut all the way in those corners, as I'm using a round tool. It's not going to get there at this stage, so I need to insert some fillets. Okay, so the tool I plan to use to machine away this border area is going to be a 1/2 inch end mill, so I need to put the radius as a 1/4 in there, and then insert the dog bone fillets in every corner. Perfect. Right then, so this is pretty much all the vectors that I need to go ahead and machine this. So let's switch over to the toolpaths tab. Okay, so the first toolpath we're going to create is a pocket around the sort of frame part of our image. So I'm going to take this vector here, shift and select the inner vector that we've got there. I'm going to use a pocket toolpath. I'm only going to cut down ever so slightly, so 0.1. I'm going to select our tool from the tool database, so 1/2 inch end mill. Check over your settings to ensure they're safe and appropriate for your machine, the tool you're using and the material that you are using. So 1/2" end mill, it's going to do that in one pass. We're going to do that in an offset pattern. We'll just call that one pocket, press calculate like so. Okay, so I'm displaying my toolpath preview as a solid colour where my material is black. Okay, now this is going to be a nice indication of how my print will look. So for the toolpath colour for this, I'm going to make that white. So everything that we're cutting away will be white, and everything that is black will be left, and that is essentially what we will be printing. Right then, so if we preview that, you can see that there. So that is essentially my frame. Perfect, so let's just tile our windows. We'll just close out of the preview there. So the next toolpath we're going to create is the actual V-carving of the print. So we're going to take the vector boundary for the trace that we created along with this outer boundary here. So this is where we're going to define the actual V-carving toolpath to go between. So it's between this vector and then all of these vectors here. And so essentially what will happen is everything that is black will be raised and everything that is in between will be cut away. So those vectors selected, let's go into the VCarve toolpath. Okay, so we're going to have a start depth of 0. We're going to apply a flat depth in this case. Okay, we're going to make that 0.1 the same as our pocket. So the tool we're going to use for the V-bit is a V-bit 90° 1/2" tool. So select that one and assign that. And I'm also going to assign a flat area clearance tool. So for all the areas where we can get in with a bigger tool, big flat tool, just to cut out at that flat depth space, we can apply a toolpath here. So I'm going to use a 1/4" end mill in there. Once it's done that, then the V-bit tool will finish up all of the finer details and the edges of all of these lines to give us that nice beveled edge. So let me go and simply press calculate. So it's going to calculate that for us. It's going to create us 2 toolpaths. It's going to create us the VCarve pocket part of the toolpath using that 1/4" end mill, and it's going to create us the actual VCarve toolpath using the 90° 1/2" V-bit. Okay, so there we have that there. So let's take a look at the pocket. So that's using the 1/4" end mill, preview that. Okay, and if we just go and set the toolpath colour of that to white, okay, so you can see it's cut away everything. And we can go to the VCarve and set that also to white and preview that toolpath, and you can see this is what we'll be left with. So again, anything that is black will be left flat for us to ink up, and everything that is white as well is essentially cut away. And this is just a good representation of how my print is actually going to look as well. Okay then, so let's just close out of the toolpath preview. So next I'm going to just create some flutes at the top and the bottom. So it's just purely for me to have easy access to removing the paper when we lay that down to print. So I'm going to take those vectors, we're going to go into the fluting toolpath, start depth at 0, we're going to have a flute depth of 0.1. The tool I'm going to use is a 0.4" ball nose. We're going to ramp at the start and at the end in a smooth ramp. So here we're just going to call this one fluting, press calculate, and then we could preview that toolpath again. If we just assign that a white colour and then press preview, we can see that's gone in there like so. Right then, so final toolpath, and that is the cutout. So I've got my vector boundary going around my job at the moment. Just going to run a profile pass, going to go all the way through the material using a 1/4" tool. We can add tabs to the toolpath if we want to, so we'll just put 4 in place there, add the tabs, and you can see they've been positioned like so. You can move them around if you wanted to, and then we could just simply go ahead and press calculate. Preview that. We're not really going to see anything because we're already outside of the bounds there. So let's just close out of that preview, and that is pretty much what we'll be left with. So if we just maximise the 3D view, And if we just take a look at the part, so you can see that everything that is black is just at the surface of our material, and everything that's white is cut away. And so the idea is that we would ink up our wood block. So what you're seeing here is when we put the ink on, everything that is black is what will be visible. Apart from the border, ignore the border here. This is just there for us to insert our paper. So we're going to put our paper, align it to the corners, roll it out, lay it over the top, press it on, and then we can use these flutes to then unpick the material, the paper, and then just roll it off where we'll be presented with our print. So at this stage we'd simply go ahead and save out the toolpaths, and then we'll head over to the labs to cut that out on the machine.
Okay, so now that I have my toolpaths, all we need to do is lay my material on the machine bed, get my tools together, and then we'll set up the machine and start cutting. Okay, so we're using MDF, and the tools we're going to use a 1/2 inch end mill, and we're going to use that to basically hog out the border. Then we're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill as part of our VCarve toolpath, where we're going to use that to basically clear all of the flat areas that we can. And then we're going to go in afterwards with a 90-degree 1/2 inch V bit to create the actual VCarve part. And then to finish, we're going to look at using a bull nose tool to create the flutes so that we can easily access our paper within the print block. Machine is now over. Got the wood block right here. It's done a pretty good job. I can see all of the detail that VCarve toolpath has picked up on. Not that I didn't see that in the toolpath preview, so I'm happy with this. Now before we go ahead and actually print this up, what I want to do is a little bit of prep work just to ensure that we have a nice clean block to work with. So all I'm going to do is just go over all of the flat areas. Remember, it's the flat areas that we're inking up, and I'm just going to try and make them as smooth as possible, just using fine grit sandpaper. Once I've done that, I'll then just go over that with the vacuum just to get rid of any excess dust that we have in place, and then that should be ready then to ink up. So I'm going to get on with that, and then we'll catch up when we start the printing process. Okay, so we've got the wood block prepped to give it a sand over and a hoover just to get rid of the excess dust. So we're pretty much ready to go and print up the block. Before I do that, I just want to check that my A1 material fits into the actual print. So I'm just going to line this up in the corner like so. Just pinch the paper in place and then simply just roll that out, and we can see we have perfect fit in there. So we've got a nice sort of jig set up here that our paper won't move out of place. And then using these fluted areas, I can simply just put my finger underneath there and simply roll that out. And that's pretty much how we're going to roll the paper on. Okay, so what do we need in order for us to create our print? So firstly, you're going to need some scrap acrylic or metal plate, something that has a smooth surface that you can ink up your ink onto. So this would be your plate. So with that plate, you're going to need some ink. So I'm using water-based relief ink. You can get that from most craft stores. And then I'm going to use a roller to roll the ink onto my plate. And once we've rolled the ink onto the plate, we're then going to roll it onto our wood block. Once that's all completely covered, we're then going to basically lay the paper on to our wood block and roll it out, give it a little bit of a press, a bit of a rub to ensure that the ink is attaching to the surface of our paper, and then we'll just simply peel it off to reveal the print. So I'm going to get on with that, and then we'll take a look at the results at the end. Okay, so I've inked up the block. Now you may find that when you are rolling the ink on, you may slip and you get the roller onto areas that you don't want. So what I'm going to do, and you can see what it has happened in a few places on my block, and what I'm going to do to sort of ensure that that doesn't go on my piece of paper when we come to roll it out, is I'm just going to cover it with masking tape. It's very simple, but it should be very effective in that it's not going to interrupt our final artwork. So I'm just going to go around this with a little bit of tape covering all the areas that got onto the block. Okay, so I've masked everything up that I don't want to get onto the paper, and now we're pretty much ready to lay our sheet of A1 onto the print. Now I've got a second roller here, and we're going to use this to roll on top of the paper to ensure that we get a good pressing. So you don't have to use a roller, you can use anything like a spoon, a wooden spoon. I've used wooden spoons in the past, but it may be a little bit difficult with this sort of job because of how big it is. So let's just lay the paper on. So I'm going to locate the corner first up there, and then we're just going to put that in place. I'm just going to pinch the top, and I'm just going to slowly roll this out like so. And so with the roller, what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to roll this on just to ensure that we're really pressing down on the ink so you get a nice transfer onto our piece of paper. We'll take a look at how this looks. So using the magic fluting section, I can simply pop my finger in there, and then we can just simply lift this up. Okay, so I'm probably going to need a little bit more ink. However, I do like the effect that we've got here. I'll just show you that on camera. Okay, so that is print. Looks pretty neat. I quite like the look of that. So you could go ahead with something like this. Now I'm going to have a go at inking this up again with a bit more ink, just to try and get more of a sort of a finished, bolder look to the actual print itself. So the beauty of woodblock printing is that I create one woodblock whereby I can create lots of different prints from that single block. So I'm just going to walk through all of the different prints that I've created. So I've created 8 prints in total, and you can see there's variation in all of the prints. Some have more ink, some don't, some appear a little bit more washed than others, and each one of those has their own unique character. And that's what I really like about the whole printing process, is that you can create multiple pieces of artwork just from the one woodblock. And what's really nice here is that we can create original artwork just simply by taking a photograph, bringing it into the software, and then the software do all of the hard work, and then we can just simply cut out the woodblock on a piece of material, and then we've got that as a basis to create multiple pieces of art. Now I really like the prints that I've created here, and there's a niggling part of me that really wants to colour some of the prints in some particular areas, sort of, you know, Andy Warhol style. And that's really got me thinking about my woodblock. What would happen if I created another woodblock that was the sort of inverse of what we already have? So everything that you can see that is white is now inked up, but is inked up with a different colour, and we can do sort of 2 sets of prints on the same piece of paper to create that colour. We could even focus on just particular areas such as the flowers. So this is something that I think I'm definitely going to revisit and try out, so maybe watch out for that video in the future. So as I said about colour, what I might do for now is just do it the old-fashioned manual hand way and look at maybe just painting in some areas. Again, this is all very subjective to sort of my own personal taste. You can do what you like with your prints. Okay, so here are 3 of my favourite prints that I've hung up in my gallery. Now, if you want to have a go at creating your own original artwork, then simply follow the steps that I've shown you in this video. If you want to take a look at this file or cut this one for yourself, simply head over to your VCarve account where you can download the project file from there. Now, if you like this video, then please give us a thumbs up, and if you've not already subscribed, then please subscribe to our channel for instant updates on the latest videos that we've released. Thank you for watching, and happy making!